Today, we're talking about fact checking and verifying AI outputs. So, one issue that I'm hearing from business leaders right now is that they're starting to use AI in their businesses and on their teams, but AI sometimes makes big mistakes. Now, some people think if I just write better prompts or use a better model, this problem is going to go away. The truth, it won't. You can't always prompt your way to a truthful output. Instead, you need to build a verification layer around your AI systems. Hi, my name is Joshua Ebner. I spent over 20 years in the AI and data science industry, including at companies like Apple, Bank of America, and boutique consulting firms. In this video, I'm going to give you a simple way to think about AI verification. We'll talk about the mindset shift you'll need to make, different levels of risk you'll need to address, and 3 practical methods that you can use to evaluate and check AI outputs without slowing everything down. Let's start with the core of the problem, how AI sometimes sounds very, very confident, even when it's totally wrong. So here, to clarify, I'm talking about large language models, ChatGPT, Claude, similar systems. These systems are effectively text generation systems. They're built to generate text, but not necessarily to generate truth. Now, there's a little bit of nuance here. Most of these systems, after they are trained, they're typically trained on huge amounts of data, mostly from the internet and books. But after they're trained, they're often tuned a little bit in order to be more truthful. So there is a little bit of nuance here, but even still, at their core, they are probabilistic text generators. So while they often do get it right and they often do repeat things that they would have quote unquote read in a book or on a web page, sometimes they get a little bit off track, and the way that they generate text produces bad outputs. Things that are factually incorrect, untruthful, sometimes even toxic in other ways, etc. Now, unfortunately, as they do this, they often still sound very, very confident. I personally see this quite a bit. I use ChatGPT almost every single day. I also use Grok on X.com, and Grok loves to give me factoids and quote statistics. And usually, when I check those things, they're sometimes incorrect or sometimes flat out wrong. And as it says these things, it's usually very confident. This is a well known problem in the industry. We sometimes call it hallucination. It also sometimes goes by the term confabulation. Don't worry about that too much. But understand that this is a known problem and a fairly common problem, even several years after these systems have been introduced. So, how do you fix this? The first thing you need to do is make a sort of mental shift. Instead of asking, how do you make AI truthful 100% of the time? Instead, you should be asking, how do we build systems that help us check and verify answers and check and verify the most important answers versus the less important or lower risk answers? Essentially, you need to think about building quality assurance processes and systems when you're using AI. By the way, if you want to know if your company is really ready to use AI, click the link in the description below. Go take my AI readiness assessment. It's 15 questions. It'll take you less than 3 minutes, and it will score you on 3 major areas that will tell you your AI readiness. Click on the link in the description and take the AI readiness assessment right now. Next, you should be thinking in terms of verification levels. Let me explain. So here I'm going to encourage you to think in 3 different levels according to risk. Level 1 is the sort of lowest risk. So if you're just drafting marketing copy, summarizing a sales call, brainstorming a sort of question and answer session, you can often just do quick checks. And in many cases, this is just a quick common sense check or an expert check. So me as an expert, if I'm looking at something related to artificial intelligence, but also a couple of other disciplines that I know a lot about, things like marketing and business, I can kind of give it a quick pass and say, yep, that looks right, or no, that doesn't look right. Something is a little bit off here. And sometimes you know exactly what's wrong and you can identify it and then rewrite your prompt, or you can go and identify other sources personally or enhance or bolster your work in some other way. But usually this is for lower risk stuff. So we're not going to do a ton of work here to QA or verify the output. Level 2, medium risk stuff. Here, you're going to want to actually find some sources. You can ask AI to give you some sources. I do this all the time. I will write inside of a prompt, make sure you identify some sources. It's usually good as well if the AI system that you're using, like ChatGPT, has a deep research function. If you ask it to identify some sources, it will usually go and find some papers or some websites, some reports from reputable sources like universities, large businesses, large consulting firms, books, experts, and so on. And it will often add citations. And you can then check those citations. You can also use internal documentation systems. We'll talk briefly about how to do that in a second. But at this risk level, you sometimes want to give an AI system access to some of your internal documents. You can sometimes do that inside of the prompt window, but also using some other methods. But if you give an AI system access to some of your internal documentation, it can cite your own documents. At level 3, the highest level of risk, these are issues where you need to get it right. It needs to be both accurate and precise. And in these situations, you often want the AI to kind of do some work. You might still want it to get some citations. You're also going to want to write great prompts, of course. But here, you're going to want a human being to check very carefully and check the work. You'll use this for things like legal, finance, compliance, firm commitments to your customers or vendors, and so on. So, what we're talking about here is kind of building in a human in the loop system. Now, I will say this does take some work having a human being go and check the outputs in a detailed way that an AI produces. But even still, with that extra work on the part of a human being, it can still speed up processes and workflows substantially if an AI system is writing that first draft or first pass output. So, to kind of sum up here, we have these three different levels: low risk, medium risk, and high risk. Most people day to day are operating sort of at level 1. You sometimes get into level 2 if you need things that are more verified. And level 3 is for the sort of high risk circumstances, like I mentioned before: legal, finance, compliance, and so on. With all of that said, though, once you have the right mindset about needing to QA your AI outputs and you have a framework for thinking about risk levels, you're going to need some techniques that can help you with this. And that's what we'll talk about next. So let's talk about a couple of techniques. Number one, and I sort of already mentioned this, you can use deep research modes in certain AI products like ChatGPT and just ask it, find me some citations, and then you can go and manually check those citations to make sure that they are relevant. Now, the higher the risk, the more you're going to need to check those citations, but it can help even at lower risk levels to use that sort of deep research function to get those citations. The second technique that I recommend, and I sort of already hinted at this, is something that we call RAG, Retrieval Augmented Generation. What this is giving access to an AI, giving it access to your documents. So I mentioned this previously, but this is a well understood and well known technique now. You take your documents, you put them in a specialized database that we would call a document store or something similar. Then you give your AI system access to that, and it will give you citations from your internal documents as opposed to external sources like web pages or books or reports from third parties. So you can use RAG to get internal citations from your own processes, SOPs, contracts, procedures, and so on. This can be very useful for bolstering the accuracy and truthfulness of AI outputs. The third technique that you can use is something that we call AI as a judge. Effectively, you can use one AI system to produce outputs, and then you can use a second AI system to act as a judge to check the work of the first one. So a very simple version of this is just day to day. Let's say you use ChatGPT to draft some marketing copy or something like that. You can use a secondary AI system like Claude or Grok and take the output of the first one from ChatGPT, bring it over to Grok, give it the initial prompt, and say, this was the output from ChatGPT. Grok, please analyze this. What do you think of this output? Is it correct? Does it have any flaws or weaknesses? Is there anything that you would add? And so on. And by using more than one AI system, typically different AI systems, you can have them check each other's work and you can actually pass it back and forth. Once you have your second AI output from, let's say, Grok, you can pass that back to the first one and say, oh, this is the output from Grok. It checked your work. Here's what it said. What do you think, ChatGPT? And you can sort of pass the output back and forth until you get to a really solid answer. I do this for work, especially when I'm in that sort of risk level 2, When it needs to be right, but it doesn't need to be perfect, I'll often use a secondary AI system to check the work of the first one. Now, this is sort of a simple process that you can use as an individual, but if you are building an AI system, you have an AI engineering team, they can also implement this at more of a systematic level where you have more than one AI system, one checking the work of the other, and you sort of build it into your technology systems. It's a little more complicated that way, but the principle is still the same. And then the last one, and I've sort of already hinted at it, but I'm going to explain it a little more clearly, is something that we call human in the loop. Essentially, human in the loop is when you have a human that is directly checking the work of the AI. This is very commonly used, especially in high stakes systems or processes. You'll typically want a human expert that's checking. Now, day to day in a simple process, where an individual is using an AI, you might have, let's say, a human expert that's using it and they can manually check. You can also, if you are not an expert, you can sometimes take the output that you get from your AI system, send it, draft it into an email, or if you're in an office, you can ask someone over and have them check it. But one way or another, you're going to try and send that output to a human expert, and that can be just part of your workflow or process. At the system level, though, if you are building internal AI systems, things like AI agents, chatbots, and other things, you can actually build that human in the loop functionality into the system such that if the AI system has low confidence in its output, you can build it such that it sort of judges its own confidence. If it has low confidence, you will stop processing and literally send the output over to a human expert, human in the loop, and then it waits for the answer from the human. The human sends the answer back, and then it can resume processing, retry, restart. There's a couple of different ways an AI system can handle a human's response. That's a little bit more complicated. I'll probably have a separate video on that in the future. So if you're interested in something like that, make sure to subscribe. But whether you're doing this at a personal level or more at a engineering and system level, human in the loop is one of the best ways of verifying and QAing AI outputs. So what I want you to walk away with is that you can't exactly fix hallucination. The thing that you want to do is try and wrap your AI systems in a verification or QA layer. But if you want to maximize the ROI from your AI processes and systems, the fact checking part is really one piece of the puzzle, and you're going to need to go further. So if you want a playbook for winning with AI, watch this next video. I break down how AI first companies are rebuilding their businesses around intelligence, data, and automation. I cover how to think about investing in AI inside of your company, how to pick the right use cases that drive core metrics like revenue and profit, how to build out your AI capabilities inside of your business and teams, and how to create a sort of AI flywheel that compounds competitive advantage over time. You can check it out here, How to Win with AI.